As practical argument page 345 says, so we're going to flip again. I'm going to give you a second here while I flip to page 345. Right under the blue box there, MLA documentation consists of two-part parenthetical references and then the works cited list. So the parenthetical citations occur throughout your paper. Anytime you pull in evidence or ideas from a source, you give a citation in parentheses. And the works cited page at the end includes a list of all those sources that you use as you went through your paper. So back to page 361, back to that sample paper. I just want to point out some of the parenthetical citations. So you can see here on the first page, here's a parenthetical citation. So we have a quotation in this sentence. Notice that the quotation isn't its own sentence. It's embedded. It's introduced. A recent survey found a little bit of a summary with a quotation embedded within the sentence. So the quotes aren't standing alone, which is really important. Then after the quote, you can see the parenthetical citation. And then a little bit of commentary, and then we lead into a new study where, again, there's a parenthetical citation. But notice in this sentence, there's no quotation, right? It's just a paraphrase of what that study found and then a quote, or a parenthetical citation. Here comes a new source with another citation on the end. So you can see a lot of synthesis, which is using sources together to support the main idea of the paragraph. And this is a mark of a really sophisticated essay. This one too, in the next paragraph that begins, "Not everyone is happy with this practice," we've got a quotation here from Kamenga, and then leads into a new quotation from Preston. Kamenga, Preston. So we're switching back and forth between sources. So again, it's a good mark of a sophisticated, mature use of sources. So that's what parenthetical citations look like. One really important thing is to not let quotes stand alone. So in red here is "don't do this." Unsurprisingly, most cats prefer fish tacos, and then suddenly comes the quote, right? Up here, you see the sentence begins with quotation marks and the quote is its own sentence. We don't want to do that because then readers don't have any context for where the quote is coming from, what the quote means, how the quote connects to what you just said. You always want to lead into your quotes in a more natural way, and you never want to let a quotation stand by itself as its own sentence. We call that a dropped quote. This one is exactly the same. The writer here has just used a comma instead of a period. So technically this sentence should end here. This should be a period. So it's still actually a dropped quotation. It's just punctuated incorrectly. Grammatically, this quotation is still standing as its own sentence. So to fix it, we don't just turn it into a comma. Instead, we want to change the language so that we're leading into the quotation in a more fluid and natural way. So again, in red, "don't do this." Here is an example of an integrated quotation here on the bottom. So it's got a signal phrase. This is what we call a signal phrase because it signals who the source is and what the book is, right? So Yusef Smith, the author of According to Kat, suggests, comma, and then we lead smoothly into our quotation. So I'm going to give you a little metaphor here to help you remember. Anytime you pull in a quote, actually, or a paraphrase, this works the same whether you're using their words or whether you put it in your own words. Whenever you use a quote or fact from a source, use a quote sandwich. So you introduce your source, give your quote or fact, and cite it. So that's the meat, right? The actual source material. And then you always come back in afterwards and explain how that quote or fact supports or adds to your paper. So you don't ever just stick the quote in. You need the bun, and then you need the bun to sort of protect and sandwich it into your own writing. So never let a quote speak for itself. Quotes can't speak for themselves within your paper. You have to get them integrated into your ideas. So we use signal phrases. So here's another example of a signal phrase. According to Jerome Skolnick, comma. This one even includes some information about who that is, director of the study of law and society. So that's really helpful to establishing that this person knows what he's talking about. So if your author, the first time you use a source, if the author has qualifications, tell me who they are. Tell me what they wrote. Tell me what the study is. Give me a little bit of summary or information about the source. Here comes the quote, and then the parenthetical citation. We'll talk about what goes in there soon. Here's another one. Jerome Skolnick argues that the policy is effective. This is a paraphrase. They've put "it's a good social policy" in their own words, but still needs to be cited. So in practical argument on page 338, 339, there is a blue box, templates for using identifying tags. It looks like this, page 339. This is a really helpful box to help you pick a good signal phrase. So the article explains, the essay suggests, right? So you can sort of mix and match these to help you lead into your summaries, paraphrases, or quotations. So if you find yourself with dropped quotations, come back to this box. So another way that you can do it, you don't always have to use a signal phrase. You can just embed. So down here in green, you can just embed the quotations into your own sentence. The reason most cats prefer fish tacos is because of their delightfully fishy taste. And then in this one, because I haven't used the author's last name as in the signal phrase. See this one up here, Yusef Smith. So we don't put Smith here. This one doesn't say where it's coming from, so we do put Smith in here along with the page number that it came from. Again, we're going to talk about parenthetical citations here in a second, but that's sort of a very fluid way to integrate into your own writing. Okay, so on page 345, 347, it's a really helpful breakdown of what to put in those parentheses. So how to actually cite your quote, how to actually cite your paraphrase within your paper as you go. In MLA format, in-text citations include the author's last name and then the page number from which you pulled the quote or idea. In that order, author's last name, page number. But what do you do if you already used the author's name in the signal phrase, like the author says, comma, quote? In that case, you just put the page number in parentheses because you've already used the author's last name here. It would be redundant to again put Smith 12 here. I already know it's Smith by the signal phrase. There are other special cases as well. What do you put in parentheses when the work has two authors, when it has no author? A source that's quoted in another source. A work without page numbers. If there's no page number, what do you do instead of the page number? What if it's a really long quotation that you want to include? So page 345 to 347 answers all of these questions and others as well. So if you have a special case, please make sure you're using the textbook as a resource there. There are some special cases that aren't listed in the textbook. You can always Google it. Just Google MLA 8 parenthetical citation, work with 3 authors, right? Whatever it is. And just make sure it's a reliable source that you're checking, a source from a university or a library, and it'll probably be accurate. I just want to remind you as well, after you get that quotation in there and you get the parenthetical citation on the end, don't just move on. You always need to explain that evidence and how it supports your argument. So you've got your idea, your evidence to support it, and then you have to link that evidence back to your main point. Otherwise, the evidence is just sitting there and your reader doesn't know what it's supposed to do for them. So you always come back in and explain that evidence, tell readers how to interpret that evidence, tell readers what they were supposed to get out of that quote or to get out of that statistic, so that way the evidence is actually working to support your argument. So if you don't know how to do that, here are some helpful questions from this website down here that you can click on if you open up the slides on your own. Okay, I've just stated this point, but so what? Why is this important to my point? What does this information imply? So sort of read between the lines for your readers and break it down for them. Why is this true? So you've pulled in a quotation, but give me some of your own analysis of why that is true. Why is this information important? Why does it matter? How is this idea related to my thesis? Number 7 is really important here, or to the main point of my paragraph. Can I add anything to this evidence? Maybe I have some personal experience that relates. Maybe I have an example that relates. So always come back in. Otherwise, you run the risks of having a paper that's way too source heavy and you sort of lose your own voice. You lose your own argument. The sources that you pull in are not supposed to speak for you. You're using the sources to help you speak. And that's a really important distinction. So again, that source sandwich metaphor. Your idea is the first few sentences of the paragraph. Then you pull in source material. And after each piece of source material that you pull in, you have to explain the so what of that quote, the so what of that statistic or idea or whatever it is that you've pulled from another source.